all you marketers out there. My name is Ian, and you're listening to another marketing strategy talk. And recently, I had the absolute pleasure to sit down with Dylan Hay. He's the founder of Hey Digital, a paid marketing agency who are absolutely crushing it on LinkedIn right now. Seriously, go check out Dylan's profile. He's dropping serious PPC knowledge on the daily with video snippets, live streams. I honestly don't know when the guy sleeps. And I am super, super excited about this one because Dylan goes deep into paid strategies. I'm talking Dream Team deep. I'm talking Mariana Trench deep. I'm talking bottom of that peanut butter jar deep. In this marketing strategy talk, Dylan gives away some of his top Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google paid strategies that are driving real results for his clients. We talk about optimizing ad creative, proper ad structure, playbooks to drive crazy cheap demo requests, what you shouldn't do on LinkedIn, and why Facebook is still the best platform to drive scalable growth for your B2B SaaS company. Dylan covers it all, but maybe more importantly, he gives you actionable strategies you can try out immediately in your paid marketing efforts. So get your pen and paper ready and let's dive right in. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn. Visit us at marketingstrategy.com, where you'll find the most effective strategies for rapid growth for marketers by marketers. Till next time. So Dylan, thanks so much for joining me on another marketing strategy talk.
No problem, Ian. Looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, definitely. So you have a very unique experience. You work with a bunch of different SaaS companies across the globe at your agency, Hey Digital. And over the years, I'm sure you've compiled like this massive war chest of experience through testing and trying different strategies and tactics. And honestly, I was just hoping we could get you on this thing and share some of like maybe your top 5 paid strategies for B2B SaaS companies you're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm looking forward to jumping into this. As you said, like at Hey Digital, we manage paid ads, PPC campaigns for SaaS companies. Specifically, I've been doing this for a couple years now, and like previous to that, I was working in SaaS businesses myself within like marketing, growth, sales before then too. So hopefully, what I'll be able to share today is some useful information to people who are listening to this if they're thinking about starting ads for their business, or if they're running them and they have some question marks about them. I know that in the kind of pre-interview that you and I were just chatting about, one of those areas where I would like to kind of dive deeper into with you today, specifically is around Facebook and paid social as well.
Yes.
Because I know like within the B2B world, within the SaaS world, so many people are scared of Facebook. They ask questions like, hey, am I my target buyer? Are they hanging out on Facebook? Will I find, are they even going to click through on ads that they see on Facebook? Like, is it going to put them off because we're a B2B business and like we shouldn't be advertising there? And we're seeing right now, and have done for like, we have seen from the very beginning success on paid social with pretty much all of our clients. But right now, over the last 3 to 6 months, we've really been doubling down our kind of approach and strategies there and seeing some really good wins. So I would love to jump into that first, if that's okay with you.
So I'm so excited about this because I can't tell you how many times I've had this conversation at multiple companies I've worked for, even at Customer Gauge, my current company. It's a difficult thing for, I think, not only executives, but everybody to wrap their head around that these B2B SaaS leaders could be on Facebook. They have a profile that could be active. They could click on an ad. It's so hard for people to wrap their heads around Facebook being the best platform for B2B SaaS. And I'm so excited you brought that up. So let's just kick it off. So clear it all up. Like if you're talking to a CFO, you're talking to a CEO, and you're saying, hey, we should run Facebook marketing right now to generate leads and business for our B2B SaaS company. What should they start with? What should they focus on?
Yeah, really great question. So the first thing I always recommend is like starting with the very basics, right? So anyone that you listen to on a podcast that knows anything about marketing or paid advertising, they will give this advice. So I'm not going to like go too deep on this part, but everyone should, at the very minimum, no matter what kind of company you are and what you're trying to achieve, you should have your remarketing campaigns set up. This is like the standard. You shouldn't not have anything running from a remarketing perspective, especially within B2B and SaaS, where you and I like both know the buying experience and the customer journey, especially if you're a product with, let's say, like a 3 to 9, maybe even 12-month sales cycle in some cases, where there's demos involved, multiple salespeople involved, like you can use Facebook and paid social as an opportunity to stay top of mind with your prospects for a very low cost. So that's one thing. And then also capitalizing on those like high intent audiences too, for okay, maybe someone came onto your demo booking page, they didn't complete their demo booking. Like it makes a ton of sense to be serving an ad to them to like make sure they go ahead with that demo booking. So this is the first thing. But then what we start to look at with all of our clients is we kind of have this three-pronged approach, I guess. So the first thing is remarketing. And then the second thing is going with, depending on the budgets that we have as well, and the kind of the target audience and the sales cycle for the customers that we work with. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're a SaaS business where you have a self-service model, like trial sign up, 14-day trial, they can sign up, don't need to get on a call with anyone. One thing that we'll be looking at immediately is going straight for conversion focused ads to cold audiences. And it's kind of funny because most people would say like, hey, you need to warm people up with content, you need to do this, you need to do that. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But we see a lot of quick wins often for clients with, as long as they have good data points for those cold audiences. So for example, we're talking about building lookalike audiences off of your customer lists, but more importantly, your like highest value customers. So if you've been running for a while, you have this data within your CRM system, segmenting your customers by highest LTV or highest like payment plans. If you don't have enough data to do that, then just segmenting by like paying customers is also an okay starting point. If you have these kind of data points and you're not a completely new business, we'll always start to look running campaigns with a cold audience, which is that lookalike audience, trying to get them to sign up for your platform. And I'll talk in a minute about the kind of creative approach to how we do that in a second. But just setting up those audiences with those lookalikes of customer lists or lookalikes of people who completed a demo booking, for example, or people who completed a sign up within the last 7-14 days. Like you can do some testing there.
Right.
And then running those, like it sounds like maybe it shouldn't work out and you should be warming these people up. But because Facebook is getting so intelligent now, like their algorithms are working so well at serving ads to the right people, as long as you feed their platform with best quality data. So if you were to just create an audience targeting someone who's never heard of you before and trying to get them to sign up for your platform, and you're just using job title targeting or interest-based targeting, to be honest, like you might be able to get it to work, but the costs are probably going to be pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
These lookalike audiences, we're seeing like low costs immediately. So that would be like one thing that we look at. And we also see that working for companies who have a demo booking focus as well. So for example, there's one client we're working with right now. We are just about a month into our relationship with them. For them, they have no self-service. Everything is focused on demos being booked. They have like a 9 to 12 month sales cycle with a minimum deal size of $70,000 or euros a year.
Mm-hmm.
And them right now, there's a campaign that we're running, which is a cold audience. It's one of those audiences that I mentioned. It's actually targeting lookalikes of people who booked a demo over the last 30 days, I believe. And
Nice.
we're driving demo bookings for 36 euros for them at the moment. And like
Wow.
that's within like 3 to 4 weeks of first launching a campaign. So there's a lot of work that we can be doing there too.
That's
So
cheap.
yeah, so that's like one thing that I would definitely be looking at, as long as you actually have data points. Like if you have a couple hundred website visitors a month and you don't have a list of like a long list of customers, or you haven't been running for a few years, then that approach won't work out for you. It's all centered around feeding Facebook with the highest quality data that we possibly can. And then what we're doing is, for anyone listening to this, they should go to Google and they should search for Facebook Power 5 methodology. So this is something that Facebook share at their like B2B events and other
Mm-hmm.
events doing as well. There's a webinar about it on their website, lots of useful information. I won't cover it too much, but essentially it's Facebook telling you how to see the best results from their advertising platform. And a lot of it is centered around the first piece, which I mentioned, which is those high quality audiences, feeding the platform with the best data possible. And then one of the second elements is letting Facebook make a lot of these decisions for you. So anyone who was running ads, even us like a year ago, I would say give as little control to Facebook as possible. Like you want to be manual about everything. You want to be
Right.
creating hundreds of different variants of ads. You want to be creating all of your own ad sets, managing the budgets for each ad and each ad set manually. But over the last 6 to 9 months, it's been like a complete flip on that. Now we're going with a real simple account structure and letting Facebook do the optimization for us. And this is what's working really, really well. So in our ads account, the only campaigns that we'll have set up will be the remarketing campaigns in one campaign, will be the prospecting campaigns in one campaign, and then will be the content campaigns in one campaign. And then within those, we'll have a couple of different ad sets, which will usually be the audiences that we're
Of
testing.
course. Yep.
Within those, we'll have the various ads. We've experimented with letting Facebook testing specific ads through their own ad testing, and we've experimented with us being manual about ads, and we're seeing fairly similar results with both. But the point that I wanted to make is like letting Facebook take the control, having a very simple account structure, and having the budget set on the campaign level. This is something that I think is now mandatory. I'm not too sure. They've been trying to roll that out for a while. But we see the best results when we set the budget on the campaign level and when we let Facebook lead in terms of making those decisions. So what it will do then is Facebook will see over time when you're running which ad sets are performing best, which creatives are performing best, and it will assign the budget itself based on what's performing. Whereas what we would do in the past would we would be making those decisions, right?
Right. Right.
Maybe don't trust Facebook too much, but over the last 6 to 9 months, like they've done an awesome job at that. And when we first started testing this really pulled back, simplified account structure, we were really surprised at the results that came through. So that would be one thing. If you're a CMO right now or a marketing leader and you go into your Facebook ads account and you have like hundreds of campaigns and hundreds of ad sets, you really want to strip that back and simplify it as much as you can and go and check out that Power Five methodology. So that's like one kind of strategic or structural thing that I would recommend. But I want to talk about those three campaigns. So we've talked about the like
Yeah.
straight for demo or straight for sign up. We've talked about the remarketing. The only thing that you really need to be testing with remarketing is different remarketing audiences, and then of course your creative. So we'll usually test like remarketing to the entire website traffic, but of course removing any previous converters, current customers, stuff like that. But then we'll be testing things like high intent pages. So visited the demo page, didn't convert, visited the trial page, didn't convert. We'll be testing timeframes as well. So last 7 days versus last 30 versus
Hmm.
last 3, depending on website traffic.
Hmm.
And that will have you covered for remarketing. And then the other campaigns that we start to look at are content led campaigns. So this is where if you have like a little bit more of a budget, we introduce content as well. If you're just spending like a couple of grand a month on ads, just set up remarketing. And if you have data, just set up the like straight for sign up campaigns.
Yeah.
If you don't have the data, then set up the remarketing and these content campaigns that I'm going to talk about. But if you have like more than $5,000 a month in budget, you should be doing all three of these.
Hmm.
So what we do with content is, as long as you have good quality blog posts that are going out, or ideally high quality videos, like informative, fun, educational videos. My team, we create a lot of these for our clients. So there'll be things like, let's say they have a podcast, they have webinars, we'll be creating clips of those, putting them into a high paced video. And we'll start using this, just promoting these pieces of content, promoting blog posts with no conversion objective, just with the objective of getting people to either watch the videos or visit the blog post on the website. And we'll be using these to build out remarketing audiences for those remarketing campaigns. But we'll also be using them just to educate people and get more people through to the site, which then increases performance of our remarketing campaigns, but more importantly, helps with that element of like top of funnel marketing for SaaS and B2B. And
Sure.
you'll see really low cost like link clicks on blog campaigns, for example. And what we see with a lot of our clients where we have volume of videos, we'll actually just run multiple different videos of theirs and build audiences off of people who have watched, let's say 50% or more of some of these videos. And those will be really high converting audiences within remarketing, focusing on demo booking or trial sign up. So those is like the three kind of campaigns that we look at: content, remarketing, and what we call prospecting, like straight for sign up, straight for demo. Now, what I wanted to talk about that's super practical is that from a Facebook and a paid social perspective, one thing that really is important to drive good results, like you talked about, I think it was before we started recording, but you talked about how you believe and you've seen Facebook being one of the lower cost like lead generators for
For
you guys.
sure. Yeah.
We see it with all of our clients who are running on Facebook. Like the cost per lead is always significantly less than Google search or LinkedIn. And so there's so much opportunity there to be like maximizing this. Now, where people struggle is on the creative side of things. So I think the reason people are a bit scared about Facebook and that it's easier for them to go to Google is like managing Google Ads is hard, but it's not as necessarily as time intensive from a team perspective as Facebook, because it's
Right.
like you do the keyword research, you write your ad copy, you're making constant changes. But with Facebook, it's a visual platform. Facebook and Instagram, even LinkedIn too, they're visual platforms. And when people are on those platforms, if you think running a 3-minute explainer video as an ad on Facebook is going to work, then that's why you haven't seen success on Facebook. Or if you think like just putting a picture up of the cover of your ebook and like nothing else, and the cover is like the most corporate, boring looking thing in the world, like that's why you're not seeing results with Facebook. So what we really lean into is I always, when it comes to social advertising, I'm always looking at what e-commerce businesses are doing. And the
Mhm.
reason I do that is because e-commerce businesses are fueled off the back of ads, and people in e-commerce, they make decisions off the back of ads. They make purchases off the back of ads. You see an ad for like a tripod like this, if you really like it, you want it, you're going to buy it immediately.
Mhm.
Obviously, sales process is different within SaaS, but the way that they advertise, we know that it works on social because that's where the businesses are built. So
That's right.
we think, okay, how can we take what they're doing and replicate that across our SaaS clients? And the way that we do that is through the creative. So we have an amazing creative, like digital designer on our team called Arada, and she comes from an e-commerce background as well. And we're producing for all of our SaaS clients, we're producing those video ads that are like really high paced. The length doesn't necessarily matter too much, but like we'll produce video ads that are between maybe 6 and like 18 to 20 seconds at a maximum for our like top of funnel and our prospecting campaigns. And then we're also producing videos that we actually call them GIFs internally. Technically they're videos, but they're like 3 seconds long, four
Right.
seconds. And I'll talk about the strategy with those in a moment and where those work best. But we're doing that, and we're doing this at volume. So we're switching out creative with our clients. Honestly, like every 2 weeks, sometimes even more frequently. Sometimes we're introducing more. Of course, if things are working well, then we're going to leave them. But we're going to take what's working well and try and introduce more, because Facebook doesn't like to serve the same thing to people too many times. Like performance will stagnate. And I think that's where people are seeing challenges as well. Now, I know not everybody has the resource to be pumping out creative at this volume or even doing good quality creative, because there are, you may have a designer on your team, but no disrespect to them, they probably haven't designed for ads before. There's a difference between designing ads and designing like an ebook
Yep.
or a blog cover, something like that. So my recommendations would be, if you can, like hire a team to support you with that. Some people don't want to do that and they can't. So the next best thing is like, I really do think it makes sense to either like start training your designer or getting them spending time focusing purely on design for advertising. It's one thing. Or you can go onto numerous like freelancing platforms or websites and try and sift through the design talent there and find someone that's really good. But if you can find someone that has like motion design skills as well to create these videos and GIFs, that would be really, really helpful. If
So
you, yeah, go ahead, go on.
let's just talk about this real quick because that's a really I mean, you made a lot of really good points, but I think designing for ads is a very different approach than designing for exactly what you said, other content. So internally at my company, we've obviously tested over 20 or 30 creatives on a single ad set. And it's funny because our designer, and it's difficult, right? Because they tend to design things in a certain way. They have a style, which you kind of have to ask them to break. You have to say, all right, these three look too similar, do it completely different. And like change the gradients. Don't use gradients. Try black and white. I mean, And it's funny because we as I mentioned, we tested a good amount of creative, and I'm curious to see your feedback on this as well. But some of our best performing content was not super designed out. So it's simple. It's kind of like a pattern interrupt, at least on our end. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but it was like a it was like a white background with like a very colorful ebook, something super simple with a very simple title. And that's what's driven our CPL from like $200 initially down to like I think a 20 or 30 range. So what's working for you guys?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I wanted to jump in there because one of the things I would say is there are so many articles online about best practice for ad design.
Hmm.
Like never read those. Like there no one really knows. When someone gets into a best practice conversation with me, I hate it because best practice is just guessing, or if
Yeah,
someone's doing something, it's usually stopped working like 3 months ago kind of thing. So
yeah,
don't listen to those. I know that's tough, but the point that you said around pattern interrupt. So that's the key. Now, with us, like of course, we want our design to be like high quality. The most important thing is on brand for our
mhm,
clients as well, because like if they're working with an external provider, that's also really important. But the absolute key is those pattern interrupts, like you said. The way that we do that is with these like really engaging, fast moving videos with these GIFs that I'll talk about in a second, or one point that you touched on, you said one of your best performing creatives was like a white background with a really vibrant ebook, for example. So this is a really fascinating point. There's a client that we're working with right now, and they asked us when we were designing ads and when we were sharing with them, like these are all the variants that we want to test.
mhm,
There were some that had a white background, and they said, "Hey, look, based on the Facebook best practice that I've read, I don't think it makes sense to run these ads with a white background because they'll
right,
blend into the news feed, etc." We had a really tough time like pushing back on that, but we
yeah,
did push back on that. And then like literally 30 days later, surprise, surprise, the top performing ad of the month was the one with the white background.
yeah,
The reason that was is because the creative itself was really like vibrant
right.
and standing out. So I know it's really challenging with design to like, especially to give feedback like via audio like this as well. But I would say that you have to figure out what works. You have to be testing a lot of things, and also a lot of the time, what you expect to work
That's right.
isn't the thing that works out.
And
So
that's it. Yeah. What you expect to work generally doesn't work. And you need to trust Facebook to tell you what's working. And I think that is again worth repeating because it's such a it's a approach that I think guys like you at Hey Digital have that most marketers maybe think, you know what, this works on this other channel. It should just translate to Facebook or LinkedIn. It's just not the case. Like you got to let the data guide your decision making.
right. And to give some really practical examples too. So a few examples of creative that we're seeing work really well right now. I'll try and explain the best I can, like
Sure.
over the air. But like, so there's one thing that has been working really well for us from a remarketing, like a retargeting perspective. So the thing that's really core to think about also with Facebook and creative is at what point is this person seeing your ad within their journey? So like if they're seeing it from a remarketing perspective, they've been on the website, the creative you want to show them and the ad copy has to be different to someone that's never heard of you and the brand before. Some people forget about that sometimes. But what we see work really well right now on remarketing is what we'll do is we create these like we call them GIFs, these short 4 or 5 second like repeating videos. And they are like it will be focused on one specific feature or one specific like use case of the product.
Okay.
So for one of our customers is like a project management suite of tools. So it's like similar to people will be using tools like people will be using tools like Asana, like Trello, things like that. One of those platforms similar to them that also has like invoicing and financing built in. It has time tracking built in, like all of that kind of stuff. And what we do for them to explain this point is like we'll make various 3 to 4 second repeating GIFs about one specific subset. So one will be like an invoice coming up onto the screen and showing that you can create an invoice. And then the ad copy ties into the invoicing element. One will be something about time tracking, and it will be just something really short that shows it's very clear within those 3 or 4 seconds that that's what this is. And when you see the copy, that ties in as well. With some of our other clients, the way that we're approaching this is instead of being feature specific, it's focused on the use cases for their product or for their solution.
Mm,
What we're seeing work well is like stacking those into our remarketing ads. So having a number of different ads talking about the different features or the different use cases, and having like a fast-paced GIF that ties into those. Like that's one creative that's working really well, like right this second, right now, across multiple clients. We're also having within those remarketing campaigns ads purely focused on getting someone to book a demo or getting
right.
someone to sign up. So it'll be like something like the copy actually within the creative itself will be about booking a demo, and there'll be like what looks like a physical button which is like book a demo that will flash up or something like that, like the more typical things that you would expect.
Hmm.
Like include those as well, but try including some of these feature specific or use case specific like animations, or if you don't have the team internally to do that, even some static on those might be worth a try. So that's one creative that's working well.
And would you target the same audience with multiple different ads like that, where it's literally features stacked with use cases stacked with, so they see a
Yeah.
stream? Yeah. Okay.
So you also want to keep an eye on the frequency too, because
Right.
like one thing I see, a mistake that I see sometimes is I'll jump into someone's ads account when they've been managing it themselves or had another agency managing it, and the frequency will be like 20 or 25
Oof.
for
That's a
their,
good
their
amount.
and like they'll have one or two creative and nothing else. So that same person is seeing the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
Like my recommendation is usually we don't really want our frequency to go above 5 or 6. But if we do, there's a couple of reasons. One will be we'll be testing different ads on them. It's the time to switch out the ads. Or the other one will be honestly, sometimes with some of our clients, we've actually tested increasing the frequency and being more aggressive and actually seen better results. But with some clients, we've seen lesser results. So that's something that you would need to check out and
Mhm.
manage yourself. But yeah, that would be for remarketing. And then for prospecting, like for completely cold audiences, there's a number of things that we're seeing work pretty well. But one that I'll share, I know it sounds like pretty self-explanatory, but I still don't see many SaaS or B2B companies doing this, is carousel ads are working really well too. Like going down the same kind of approach, focusing on, like we usually do one carousel ad that's feature specific, one carousel ad that is use case specific, and then one that's maybe like more general. And then we'll test different variants of those, whether it's different color palettes or whether it's different call to actions on them, for example. But for a couple of our clients, like last month, the top performing ads were actually carousel ads from a prospecting perspective.
Hmm.
I think that might be because if it's engaging and if you can get someone to click through, there's a lot more real estate that you can like take up. And it's like if someone's taking action to click through and look through, they're engaging with your ad more. Because I would usually expect our like punchy 15-20 second video ads to perform best from a cold audience, or at least getting people into our remarketing audiences. But
Right.
we've seen those carousel ads work really well. So that would be another thing that I would recommend trying. And then one other tip that I'll give on this, if it's okay with you, Ian, is
Go
like
for it.
I'm seeing something that we try out every so often is instead of building an ad through Ads Manager like we would do normally, we'll write a post on the company's like Facebook page, but we'll do it in the style of an ad. So we'll treat it as though it's an ad, and we'll post it on the page. And then the first thing that we'll do is like either ask their top user group to go and like take a look at it and maybe drop some comments on it, or we'll run like a very low budget campaign to drive some engagement onto that post. And then in our Facebook ads manager, in our prospecting campaign or in our remarketing campaign, you have the option where you can pull through a post through the post ID, and we'll use that post ID, pull it through, and then run it as an ad. One of the negatives of that is that you don't then have the option to create like the Facebook ad like call to action button or sub headline or something like that. But the benefit is um, the ad already has gathered a lot of social proof. And if someone has never heard of your brand before, they see your ad and they see like, even if it's just 5 people or like a couple of people commenting like, oh, I use this and I love this, or whatever it might be, that can really help with the performance. And also another thing, this is slightly different, but another thing that we've seen sometimes this is like a little bit more, you have to be a bit more calculated with this, but we've seen sometimes we'll run an ad purposely knowing that it's going to cause more people to engage with it, because we then see that if people engage with the ad, Facebook sees more people engaging with it and often tends to push it more, and we get better performance. So um, one time, to be honest, we actually did this completely unintentionally. There was a tiny error in the creative itself. It was like, it wasn't, you wouldn't even really call it a spelling error, but it was like one letter was capitalized when it shouldn't have been. But because it was like an I, you wouldn't have even noticed, kind of thing. But like a few people did notice and commented on it. And at first, our client was like, oh, maybe we should stop this. But then when we looked at the data, it was like the top performing ad over the last like 3 months or something. So that's something that kind of strategy, I wouldn't like, don't go making spelling errors on purpose or whatever, but think about what can you do to make people want to actually engage with your ad. And that post ID like idea is one that can potentially work out as well.
That's the spelling error is the what we're gonna call the drizzly strategy, right? They had that viral email go out with all of the. That's still one of the funniest things that's happened in 2020. So that actually made me laugh out loud. Um, but okay, so a couple things to unpack there. So make I don't know if we would go out and say make mistakes in your ads, but I think your point of like do something that makes people engage with it, whether it be the grammar police or other people. That's a really good point. And the second one, or it was actually the first one, which is warm up your post, get social proof on it, and then push it out to a wider audience. I worked at a company previously that leveraged that pretty successfully. They they actually bought like very cheap likes and comments from like India for like $200, and I don't think that's the move anymore. But your point of like getting the right engagement on a post ahead of time, like through a user group or something like that, is a very good strategy to warm that post up. And Facebook, thankfully, does allow you to take that post, add it into your ads manager, and run ads on it that's already had the social proof on it. So that's a really good point that I think marketers should definitely take.
Yeah, you could
Yeah,
even just like, you could take even like a $10 budget or like a $20 budget and run it against the audience of your current customers. Because in Facebook, you'll have an audience of people that have converted.
that's right.
And if you don't mind spending $10, it's fine, it's nothing. And some of the like, you'll have some customers that will see it and will comment. Obviously, you just want to hope that they don't be like, hey, why am I seeing this ad or something? But it's definitely something that's worth testing. It's not something that's making up like a big portion of the budget that we're spending, but it's something worth testing. And the other thing kind of on that point that's maybe a little bit more tactical even is within Facebook ads like manager. I don't know how I would explain this like without being visual, but I'll try my best. One thing that you can do is that when you're creating ads, you can replicate the same creative and the same ad across multiple ad sets or campaigns. Whilst if you use the same post, you can basically like publish the ad, take the post ID, and pull it across all of your campaigns.
Love
So
that.
that no matter what campaign it's running on, if someone comments on it, that comment will be seen across all
All
of
of
the
them.
campaigns that
Yeah.
you're running. And it's kind of hard for me to explain exactly how to do that, but people can probably Google search it and figure that out. That's one thing that we've been doing that's like super tactical, that's actually working really well right now, is meaning that like with some of our clients, all of the ads that are running, like pretty much all of them have good comments or engagement on them. And it's because they're just being that one or two variants of the creative are being pulled across the multiple campaigns that we run. So that's one quick tip as well.
And that's a great point too. So I'm buddies, and I used to work with the head of paid acquisition at HubSpot, and I've talked to him a couple times, and he basically said the same thing. Is like we have one ad that we run across and test multiple different ads against, and it's still the champion ad, and it has just a ton of built-in social proof over the years of running it, that it's just really hard to beat because it's so ingrained and people see the thousands of comments and likes on it, and it's just like, wow, this is something that I should check out. um, so again, social proof, for sure important on Facebook ads. All right, so I could listen to you talk about this stuff all day long. Facebook, I'm super convinced, is one of the best channels, if not the best channel, for B2B SaaS to generate leads, to generate demos, to generate close one business. And I think there is a disconnect between what marketers are seeing and what executives are buying into from a business strategy. I know there's like the Facebook boycotts going around now, which might make it more difficult for marketers like myself to get buy-in for a strategy like that. But when you look at the dollars and cents of a Facebook versus a LinkedIn, um, what are you seeing? How is it different on Facebook versus LinkedIn? Um, we were just talking about this the other day that we wish the LinkedIn algorithm was, 1/100th as smart as the Facebook algorithm. So I think the listeners can probably guess where this is going. But um, let's dive into LinkedIn real quick. What are you seeing that's working there? What are some strategies that companies can put in place to generate some business?
Yeah, so we do advertise on LinkedIn as well, to make that clear to everyone. Like, it is still an important channel. However, like, the reason I get so passionate about Facebook is for the exact same reason that you said, Ian, is like it's so easy to
Yeah.
drive volume at lower costs there.
Yep.
But with LinkedIn, the challenge is that it's still very expensive as an advertising platform. Now, sometimes execs at companies are like okay with that, because their argument is that yes, it's expensive, but in theory, the lead quality should be better
That's
because of
right.
the marketing capabilities and the people that hang out here and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, I don't really see that across the accounts that we manage. Like, sometimes it will be better, but there's like, how do you differentiate what's better in terms of quality, right? When, okay, maybe the quality of leads might be better on LinkedIn, but you can get 3 leads on Facebook or 4 leads on Facebook, or maybe even more for the price of 1 lead on LinkedIn. And like, if 2 out of those 4 is good, then it's better than LinkedIn. Like, that's one of
Yep.
the challenging conversations that we have sometimes. But what we see working on LinkedIn is that very, very rarely do I see those campaigns that we talked about earlier, that we do on Facebook, where it's like, okay, you choose your target audience, you serve an ad to them, which is like a single image or a video, and you ask them to sign up or book a demo. Very, very, very rarely do we see those working. Like, sometimes they might get people to take an action, and like, yes, you'll get people booking demos or signing up, but the costs can be like kind of out of control.
Hmm.
Um, so that would be one thing. Like, what we see work on LinkedIn and what we use LinkedIn for is having it set up with remarketing, like using LinkedIn remarketing audiences is one thing. But LinkedIn, our approach is more focused on content. And especially now, you might have seen, or anyone listening to this might have seen, that very, very recently, LinkedIn finally said that they're going to roll out the ability to retarget people based on how much of your video they've watched on LinkedIn ads. So that's one thing that we're going to be experimenting with a little bit, because there wasn't that opportunity before. But on LinkedIn, all we're really running is content-led campaigns. So promoting ebooks, downloads, and promoting videos that we've created of like podcast clips, or videos of clips of webinars, that kind of stuff. And then how we do that from an ebook or lead magnet perspective, we see the best results, or the best cost per result, through using the LinkedIn lead forms. So, for example, we'll run an ad where it's an ebook ad, and if someone wants the ebook, they'll click on the ad, and then a native form on LinkedIn will pop up. The thing that's great about the forms on LinkedIn is that it can basically pre-fill all the data that you want it to, like company size, company name, LinkedIn profile URL, all that kind of thing. So the experience for the user is literally, they click the button on the ad, they see the form, rarely do they have to type anything in, they click the button itself, and then they move forward. And then you can add in things to that lead form if you want, and we can talk about that. And then we deliver them the ebook like there and then, and like we connect them up with our CRM system through whichever integration is. And that's one thing for cheapest and like highest volume of downloads for ebooks and downloads. We use those LinkedIn lead forms. Something else that people could try. I'm not going to say I have like tons of experience with this one, but I've done a couple of small tests with this, and I've interviewed people on my podcast who have done larger tests with this. And that right now is the LinkedIn conversational ad
Yep.
beta we have.
Yep.
So it's essentially like LinkedIn sponsored emails 2.0. I've seen good results from the small tests that we've done, and the people that I've spoken to have seen good results from those as well. It's essentially sending out a sponsored email to people, but it has a mini chatbot functionality built in, so you can pre-program responses and actions that you want people to take. So you could ask them pre-qualifying questions, for example, and then send them to your LinkedIn lead form, depending on like how they've answered those questions. And I've seen, to give some numbers on those, like for example, I did a podcast interview with Jason Widup, who's the VP of marketing, I think, at Metadata,
Hmm.
and he was driving demos for, I think it was like $120 to $150 for a demo booking for the team there. And I know that he'd scaled that up to, it wasn't just like 5 or 6 demos. I think last time I spoke to him, he was maybe doing like 30 or 40 a month at that kind of price. And then
Wow.
um, Gabriel Lim, who's the founder at a company called Sales Whale.
Hmm.
I had him on my show, and he was doing something very similar for even lower cost. I think he was getting like $50 to $80 maybe for a demo booked. So that's one thing that you could maybe experiment with. Um, and one of the other good things about those is with the sponsored emails or with the conversational ads is that it appears in someone's inbox and then they won't be able to receive another sponsored ad in their inbox from anyone for 30 days. So even if you hit them, you'll still, if they don't take an action, you'll live in their inbox for 30 days and they won't get another sponsored message. And you
Wow.
also have the option to add a small, it's like a tiny square. You can add like a cover image up there. So it can be pretty good for branding, like just sticking your logo up there or something with a CTA on it. So that's one thing that you could maybe experiment with that I've seen a little bit of success with, but we haven't spent a ton on, just to be clear. Go ahead.
Kind of sounds like a gold rush, to be honest. So if they can't get uh, sponsored emails for 30 days after one's served to them, seems like volume's the play to
I
get market
think
share.
Yeah, I think that's why like some people are talking about it, but some aren't, is because people are worried of like, okay, how scalable is this? Because if you're targeting like marketing leads or heads of marketing or whatever, and
Yeah.
loads of companies are trying this, then you're going to run out of volume. So that's why it's one of the things that we haven't like tested too heavily either, is because
Mhm.
it's potentially not like the most scalable channel. But yeah, that's how we're looking at LinkedIn. One other thing that we do look at LinkedIn for, if the companies we're working with don't have a high volume of data or like don't have lots of information in their CRM and we want to make Facebook a success, is we'll actually run some LinkedIn campaigns driving a high volume of traffic from LinkedIn to our site. And through the like LinkedIn insight tag, we can essentially like use that to help us build out more intelligent audiences for Facebook. That takes a bit more time and a bit more volume of spend. But if you don't have any data in the back end and you really want to go like aggressive on paid ads, that's one other way that you can maybe experiment a little bit to build out good quality audiences for other social channels.
Have you had any luck with like targeting skills or job title, things like that on LinkedIn? I know that's not super available on Facebook. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like one of those things that LinkedIn maybe does have over Facebook as far as targeting is concerned.
Yeah.
Anything
So
there?
yeah, it does have that. Like that's why I think that's why most people lean towards LinkedIn for B2B and saying, hey, we should go down this route, because you can be so specific with the job title targeting, the skills, the interests. But it just comes to the costing thing. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we can be targeting these people, but the price is just so high.
Yeah.
And like within Facebook, once it figures out what your audience is that's converting, like it really optimizes very well towards that, and you can just constantly see volume and conversions come through. Whereas with LinkedIn, like we struggle to get sometimes to the volume that we want for our clients and the CPL or the cost per lead or the cost per acquisition that we want. And it just doesn't feel like a channel that we want to scale out too often, when we can be taking that spend and focusing it on social or focusing it on Google if it makes sense to do so.
Yeah. Makes
LinkedIn,
total sense.
I would love it to work more, but I think it's still early days. Like you can definitely see success there,
Yeah.
100%. But I would rather spend advertising dollars elsewhere and like have LinkedIn as like a channel that we have a presence on.
Yeah, and I think speaking of presence, so Hey Digital and yourself specifically, you have a really, really solid LinkedIn presence. So if anybody's listening to this, go check out Dylan Hay, his personal profile. Check out Hey Digital, follow them. He does a fantastic job rolling out content on a daily basis, but it's super high quality too. So everything's branded. Like he said, those really hard hitting videos. He has that down to a science. I think better than anybody else I've seen, honestly, Dylan.
Thank
Not to
you.
throw a compliment your way, but I always know it's you. I always know that I'm going to watch it because it's super valuable. There's, minute and a half, 2 minutes, sometimes 3 minutes worth of content in there. It's super digestible, but presence is super important, specifically for like B2B companies these days. Anything you can give there as just a quick kind of one or two hit points on that?
Yeah, I would say take a look at, obviously, most people listening to this will have checked out Drift and what they used to do and still do to some degree
Hmm.
on LinkedIn. But then I would look at a company called Sweetfish Media, James Carberry. I know that you know
Of
him and his,
course. Yeah.
like they're doing, and then look at a company called Gravy, Gravvy. They've like taken over LinkedIn over the last couple
Yeah.
weeks,
Yeah.
say. So what I mean and what you'll see when you look into those is those companies are doing an awesome job of empowering their employees to be active from their personal profiles and build their own brands, and that is having a big impact on like brand awareness and positioning for the business at the end of the line.
Hmm.
Drift were the first company that did this, and now there's other people like experimenting. Those three that I mentioned would be the first three that I look at, and like I'm building out. My team is very small, but I'm building out a program to be doing like something very very similar, because like for us as a business, every single deal that we've closed has been, well, not every single one, I would say 95% of them has been through LinkedIn content that I post on my personal page, and then a couple of deals that we've closed from podcast guests and just friends I've made through that sphere. But like I we're by no means a huge agency right now, but I've built us to a pretty successful point already with a small team with like no sales work whatsoever. And that's because of LinkedIn. And like I see a really big opportunity scaling now. And I think B2B companies, software companies can be doing that too. And it's a win-win for everyone, because you as a business, you receive more awareness, more authority. And for your employees, if you approach it in the right way with them, you're not just asking them to share loads of stuff about your company. You're empowering them to be active and build their brand and build their audience. And like when they leave you, I know you don't want to think about that, but ultimately, very rarely is someone going to stay with a company for like 40 or 50 years
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when that time comes and they do leave, they're going to be leaving you with something that's also really beneficial for them that they can take anywhere that they go. And that's a huge like play for them. Like it's how I set up this business. I built my personal brand when I was working at Leadfeeder. It was great for the company. We grew a lot and it was great for me. So if you can think about that and have those conversations in the right way with your team, that would be, for me, the opportunity on LinkedIn. You can spend way less than you need to on like ads, and you can empower your team to build their brands, to grow as individuals, and see a significant uptick. And then when you're advertising, your job as an advertiser becomes easier when more people have buy-in to you, your brand, and your team. It just makes everything else easier. So that would be my kind of advice around that.
Yeah, great advice. Thanks for that. And I think those companies you called out are great. Specifically, James and Sweetfish Media, they're doing a great job getting all the podcast content out. And I agree, Gravy, Gong's really good at it too. But there are companies that are investing in their employees like that and actually enabling them to do that at scale, which I think is a really interesting strategy. And you can already tell companies that are investing in it, it's paying off because they're top of mind. You know what they do, you know kind of what their software is capable of just through their employees, which that's kind of like the new generation of marketing, I think. And companies that aren't doing that, I think, are going to miss out on a pretty big piece of marketing mindshare. So, all right, we're almost out of time here. And Dylan, thank you so much. It's been super interesting to hear your take on Facebook and LinkedIn. Obviously, the last one we have on the list here is Google. Can we run through Google in 5 minutes or so? Just because I think Google is one of those things that's been around for a while. I think it's pretty much common knowledge what works and what doesn't. There's obviously a couple tricks here and there that I'm sure you'll enlighten us with. But what are your thoughts on Google?
Yep. So, similar to all the other platforms, the first thing you should be doing is setting up all of your remarketing campaigns. So that's through the display network and then through like remarketing search ads as well. Like just always have those set up at the very, very minimum.
Yeah.
Um, then the next most common kind of go-to route for most people is like targeting those high intent, low hanging fruit keywords. So through your keyword research and through your knowledge, you'll be able to figure out what those are. I won't go into the specific tactics of like budget strategy and bidding and stuff like that, because I'll try and keep it to a couple minutes. But like building those out makes a ton of sense. Where we're seeing really good success on Google specifically, and some things that you can try, especially if you're wanting to drive more volume and traffic to your site as well, to then improve your remarketing audiences. You'll see that I have this habit of like, okay, how can we be building out better audiences for our social ads, and how can we use other platforms to do that? So one way that we do that right now is with the Google Display Network, through using like the essentially like in custom intent audiences within Google Display. You can do
Hmm.
things kind of similar to Facebook with some more tricks and tools. So you can go into Google, and one thing that we'll do is upload a list of all of our customers' users, or all of their previous converters. Will like use the Google Analytics like conversion of, okay, this person's converted, and we'll say to Google, we want you to find people similar to these, like similar to converters is one campaign that works really well. So we'll set that up in the display network. And when you're doing display campaigns, there's a few things you have to be really careful of, because they can kind of go out of control very easily and drive a lot of quality traffic. So one is make sure audience expansion is turned off for any of these campaigns. And Google are making it harder and harder to find that setting. It's like changes all the time. So just like Google search how to turn off audience expansion in Google Display if you're running display campaigns right now, because I see that a lot. People leave that turned on. Go ahead.
Would you consider that general rule for all social channels, Facebook and LinkedIn? Would you also turn that off?
Yeah, always turn it off,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
they think it helps, but very rarely have I seen it
Yeah.
work very well. So always have that switched off. Especially in display, it's like super important, because otherwise you'll start seeing like thousands, hundreds of thousands of impressions sometimes, and you can be driving a load of traffic to the website. And if you drive really poor quality traffic to the website, it then ruins your pixel and your audiences. So be really careful with that.
Hmm.
Make sure you have your location targeting set up in there as well. Make sure you set your exclusions. Like, everyone has their own opinion on this, but you definitely don't want to be appearing on certain like political sites, especially given the nature of the world right now. Very rarely do we see, for SaaS and B2B businesses, there's no point running in like the app store or within games or something like that. Turn off like any adult content. Like, just when you're running these display campaigns, it seems like a lot of work, but just be really, really tight with them. And once you do that, the costs are like so low to drive traffic through to the site. And so one is those similar to previous converters or customers. Another one that we love to use is you can go in and you can plug in the URLs of your competitors' websites and say to Google, we want people similar to people who have been on these sites. So you can list in like 10 competitors or 5 competitors or
That's
whatever,
great.
and be serving ads to people that Google classifies as similar as those.
Yeah.
Over time, we also like to experiment with, you can layer in different like demographic targeting or in-market audience targeting. So Google classifies, it will have people that it thinks are in the market for enterprise software as an option, people that are in the market for productivity software. Like, there's thousands of options that Google has for in-market audiences, and it takes that data by seeing what your behavior is like across the internet and categorizing it and then giving it to us advertisers. It's like kind of weird if you start looking into it, but like you can use that in your ads. So we use the display network a lot for driving traffic of good quality and building out our remarketing audiences. So that would be one thing that a lot of SaaS companies don't do and B2B companies don't do. So check that out. And then the other thing would be, this is more like an account structure thing. But we're seeing good results right now with, over the last few years, everyone was talking about this account structure of SKAG, which is single keyword ad groups. With the way that Google has changed some of its like structures, we don't see that being the best performing ad structure right now. We call it a modified SKAG model, where you keep to the single keyword ad groups, but you include all of the match types
Hmm.
within one single ad group. So I
Smart.
know we said that we'll try and keep this to 4 or 5 minutes. I think I'll cap there. But again, if anyone like wants to chat more about this with me, I'm always happy to just answer any questions if people have them about this
Yeah, I
stuff.
appreciate that. So that's a really good summary. I also specifically I love the target your competitors traffic. That was a it's a really good tip. All right, so Dylan, it's been amazing. I think your knowledge on this subject is pretty much unmatched. So thanks for taking the time. Let's do the lightning round to finish up. You good with this?
Yep, let's go.
All right. So what's your favorite marketing book of all time?
Yeah, that is a great question. For me, it's like this recent one from Drift.
He's grabbing it out of his
I'm so sorry. I thought it was going to be way faster. It was
It's so good. This one scale. Yeah, I love it.
everyone. Yeah.
Good one. All right. So if you could get all of the marketers listening to take one thing away from this talk, what would it be?
Try Facebook ads.
There you go. I knew you'd say that. All right. So where can people find you? Give us a little bit of a snapshot about Hey Digital. Throw some
Yep.
plugs out there.
Yeah. So they can just go to heydigital.co, like .co. That's our website. We just relaunched that. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. Or the best place for me really is LinkedIn. Like I'm there active every single day. So if you search for Dylan Hay, I'll be probably the only Dylan Hay that you'll find, and you'll find me pretty easily. So yeah, that's the best places to check me out.
Nice. Thanks again for joining up on another marketing strategy talk here, Dylan. It's been amazing, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. It was a ton of fun.
Thanks.